We're now going to talk about how we can use the technique of by inspection when dealing with reflection. So let's read this summary first here. It says that when you're reflecting in the x-axis, what you do is you just put a negative in front of the entire function. If you're reflecting in the y-axis, what you do is you replace your x with a negative x. So you're going to now see this in action. We're going to work through each of these examples here. The first one says, find the equation of the image of y equals the square root of x after a reflection in the x-axis. So you know that when you're reflecting in the x-axis, what you're going to do is you're going to put a negative in front of the entire function. So that means I'm going to get y is equal to negative the square root of x. And we can think about what this would look like as well. So if we picture our graph here, I know that this right here is just what the square root of x looks like, but now I'm reflecting it in the x-axis. So if I reflect it in the x-axis, that means it's going to be down here. So it's important that you can kind of get a visual of what you're doing. Sometimes you can't visualize it and you just have to, trust the process, but sometimes you can visualize it and it's important that you can do so. All right, next one. Find the equation of the image y is equal to the square root of x after a reflection in the y-axis. So when there's a reflection in the y-axis, you replace the x with negative x. That means I'm going to get y is equal to the square root of negative x. Now, if we think about what this looks like, we know what our original graph looks like. If we come here, we go there, y is equal to the square root of x. And now, if I reflect it across the y-axis, that means my new graph looks like this. Y equals the square root of negative x. So important that you know how to reflect both the x and the y. And if you can, you should be able to visualize it as well. All right, let's keeping on here. Find the equation of the image of y equals x squared after a reflection in the x-axis. So because you're reflecting the x-axis, that just means you put a negative in front of the entire thing. So it's just going to be negative x squared. And we should know what this looks like. We should know what this looks like. This is simply going to look like this. It's reflected down there. That's y is equal to negative x squared. So nothing too crazy there. That's what it's going to be. It's also important that we can now reflect the y-axis. So let's read this one. Find the equation of the image y equals x squared after a reflection in the y-axis. Remember, when there's a reflection in the y-axis, as we're told to up here, you replace the x with negative x. So that means into my x spot here, I'm replacing it with negative x. Now, what is negative x squared? It's just x squared. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, isn't that what I began with? How does that make any sense? Well, this is where it's important that if you can visualize it, you should. Now, trust the process. Trust that the maths works here. You don't always have to visualize it. Sometimes it will just be too much of a complicated function to visualize it. But when you can, you should. All right, so if we come over here and I draw what I start with. So that's y equals x squared, right? Well, if I was to reflect this in the y-axis, right? The y-axis is here. If I were to reflect that in the y-axis, would you agree it's just going to be the same thing? Because it's symmetrical around the y-axis. So if I reflect it in the y-axis, I just get back to what I begin with. And that's the reasoning behind it there. All right, perfect. Let's keep on going. Last two here. Find the equation of the image this after the reflection that. So this is one of those instances where, I'm not quite sure what this looks like, but I'm just going to trust the process. If I'm reflecting this in the x-axis, I know that I'm just going to put a negative in front of the entire thing. If I wanted to expand that out, it's going to be negative x minus 2 over x squared plus 1. So trust the process. You know what to do here. All right, let's keep on going. Find the equation of the image this after reflection in the y-axis. Again, trust the process. You know that in this case, what you're going to do is just replace each x with negative x. So because I've got an x here, I'll replace that with negative x plus 2 over negative x squared plus 1. Y is equal to negative x plus 2 over, now negative x squared is just x squared plus 1. That's going to be my answer. And just like that, we are done. So hopefully you feel comfortable with doing reflections by inspection. So remember, inspection is just a really quick way to do it. No fuss, no muss. Hopefully you found this useful.